Hi, it's Steph, and it's been 3 months since I've planted up this newly renovated raised bed garden, and I thought that we would do a little walkthrough to see how things are growing. Come on into my garden. And if you recall, back in May, we had shown you this garden area that we had just recently redone with replacing some of our rotted wood beds to some Vigo raised beds that are metal. And this has been such a wonderful upgrade in this area. I have been loving them so much. Not only are they beautiful to look at, but they've been so productive. And I'm certain that the great quality soil that I have in here by Coast of Maine is certainly helping. But together, the soil with the beds have just made for lots of vegetables and flowers, and I'm regularly cutting to make fresh cut arrangements and bouquets, and I've just been really happy with this space this season. You can see how large my zinnias are. Now, I will tell you right off the bat that I will go all in on the Bennery's giant zinnias next year because the blooms on these are amazing. So I grew this golden yellow variety as well as the wine and the salmon rose, and they're all equally beautiful. So this is the golden one. Here is the wine, and here's a really large one. Look how beautiful this is. It's gorgeous. It's like a really deep fuchsia. And the salmon rose is right here. They are stunning, and every single one is a double. So double meaning a roughly petally one like this, not single blooms like some of the other varieties of zinnias. So I've been really happy with them. I have them underplanted with some amaranth that is also looking gorgeous. As we head into the fall season, I can see myself using these lots in floral arrangements because of the deep color of not only the foliage, but check out these blooms. Just so beautiful. I also had some sunflowers, which are probably difficult to get on camera because they are so tall, but they have been producing like crazy. I had to cut out a couple that were just done blooming for the season, but they're also just really pretty, and I can see them all the way from my house. And this garden is set pretty far back in the yard, so that's always fun to look out the window and see their smiley little faces. I have some shorter stature sunflowers planted here along with some cosmos, which the cosmos are a little late to bloom this year. They're all budded up and just starting to bloom. These here are actually an orange variety of marigold that I grew. Now, I had purchased most of my seeds from Baker Creek Seeds and from Swallowtail Seeds, as well as Select Seeds. So that's where I get most of my seeds from. Occasionally, I will also get some from M.I. Gardner and a few other online sources. But check out the size bloom on this white Cosmo. This is the Sonata White, and the Sonata White Cosmos are a little bit shorter in stature. So they're great for, say, like the first or second row of a border. Now, my tomato production has not been great on my slicer tomatoes, but they've been wonderful on my cherry tomatoes. So here I have a Buffalo Sun tomato planted, and I only have like 2 tomatoes, which is such a bummer. But I did have to thin this out quite a bit this year because I think all of the foliage was sort of shading the tomato plant because I had the sunflowers up above. So I think that's why I was a little light on the slicer tomato production. I had 2 plants there, and so far only 2 tomatoes. But you know what's doing wonderful? My peppers. So here I have quite a few varieties of peppers. This one here is the King of the North, and they are a bell pepper that is now coloring up red. And I have a few of those to pick. And here I have some more King of the North and tons of jalapenos. I've actually been picking these like crazy, and we've made jalapeno popper chicken, which I shared on my channel just a week ago. And this one here is the Jimmy Nardello, which is an Italian pepper. And look how pretty they are. They're a red pepper. And I have one back there. So I thought those were really beautiful. I have some basil in the front here and sage. And if you're not aware, sage is a perennial herb and it smells wonderful. Now, this is said to be sort of great if you have a cough. So you can make a tea out of the sage, and you can either just warm up some milk and put some sage in there, or you can boil water and make a legit tea. And it's really tasty, and it also is healing for coughs. At least that's what my mom says. Old wives' tale. So take it for what it's worth and give it a shot this winter if you have sage in your garden. But check out this beautiful dahlia. This is the ketchup and mustard for obvious reasons. It is yellow and red. And while these are not colors that I would typically go for in my garden, I was gifted this tuber and I have really loved it. I think it's really beautiful and it's also super productive. I've gotten so many of these large blooms from this garden. The thing I've had the most fun with this season, I would say, is making floral arrangements. I am cutting flowers from this garden and making an arrangement for my home at least once a week. And anytime that I go visit a friend during the gardening season, I also love to bring them a floral arrangement. So that's been my favorite part. Growing yourself flowers, highly recommend. So not only are the peppers doing wonderful and some of the herbs that I have planted here, but so are my cherry tomatoes. So they are more than making up for the slicer tomatoes that aren't giving me much this season. Now cherry tomatoes, here's a little hack that I'm going to share with you. I started growing them up and over this cattle panel trellis last season, and it's probably the only way that I'm going to grow tomatoes, cherry tomatoes going forward, because cherry tomatoes get really tall because they're indeterminate tomato varieties, so they will just keep growing and growing. And they get to a point where I could no longer stake them. But if I have them growing up and over this trellis, not only is it easy for them to pick, but I can just keep training them over, and it is so much easier for me to stake them than staking them, because I can just reach over and sort of just keep the vine intertwined. And you can see how many clusters of this black cherry tomato I have. This is my favorite cherry tomato variety. It is delicious, has a little bit of a smoky flavor, and it's my favorite one to grow. But if you've never grown cherry tomatoes on an arbor before, I highly recommend. And in this bed here, I am using a trellising system or a staking system, I guess you could call it, with some netting for all of my dahlias, and they're doing beautifully this year. You can see that I actually have room in the paths to walk through, which is something I haven't had in the past because my dahlias always get really wild and kind of overtake the space. But this year I actually have room to walk through, which is awesome. And I'm able to come in here and deadhead them regularly, and they're just starting to produce now as we head into the end of August. Dahlias take a really long time to get going here in my Zone 6 garden because I don't start them in advance. I just plant the tubers in the ground somewhere in the beginning of May, and then by mid-August or so, I start getting blooms. So that is where we are now, but these will bloom for me until our hard frost at some point in October. So really fun late season annual to have in your garden. Now they are a little bit of work for me because I have to lift the tubers and store them over the winter, but they are so beautiful that I don't mind. But you can see here that I'm using some of these T-posts with some netting, and I have 2 tiers of the netting, and it is really helping keep these dahlias nice and upright, and in case of strong winds, it's keeping them in place. So I have really loved using this system, and it is what I'm going to do going forward. So this path here that we left between these 2 Vigo beds actually worked out really well so that I could walk through them. But these marigolds that I grew have gotten really big. You can see how large they are. I've actually had to stake them because they tend to want to topple over. This is the Sugar and Spice Marigold by Baker Creek. That is where I purchased the seeds, and they are really pretty, and they're not a true white. They're a bit of a buttery kind of cream color, but they're really pretty. There is some deadheading that needs to happen, and I try to do that pretty regularly. Come down here and deadhead my flowers. I find it really cathartic and relaxing, and it also keeps your blooms coming. So the more you cut on them to make floral arrangements and to deadhead, they will keep producing blooms for you, and that is what you want in a cutting garden. So I've been really enjoying these. And strawflowers. Now these sound like paper when you touch them, and they're really beautiful, and they also look really pretty as dried flowers. This is the Salmon King variety by Select Seeds, and it has really pretty shades of salmon and some pinks. I actually have some more right here in this area. You can see that these are kind of peachy. This is what they look like when they're first budded up, and then they start to open up, and they're just really pretty flowers. I really enjoy them. Now, something that has gotten really tall are my cosmos. You can see here how large they have gotten. Now, this is a really beautiful one, and the variety is escaping me at the moment, but it almost has like a frilly center in this bright pink magenta color. Now, cosmos are really kind of nostalgic for me because it's something that I used to grow with my grandmother as a child, and so I grow them every year just in memory of her. And because they can get pretty messy, but I really have fond memories of growing them as a child with my grandmother. And so I remember picking them in her garden and making little bouquets and playing wedding with the bouquet. So all kinds of fun memories. So I grow them every year, and they always make me smile, even if they do get a little bit wild. So you can see that I've had to make some makeshift staking here with some bamboo sticks and some string just to keep them kind of from toppling over on top of the strawflowers and on the marigolds. But all in all, they are all budded up and starting to bloom. These are another plant that I find do take some time to get blooming. And it could be that I sometimes have a little bit of an issue with sun in this garden, but it could also just be that they just take a while because I pinch them a lot, and I pinch them so that they can get bushier and so that I can get more blooms. The downside of pinching is that you will get blooms a little bit later. And so I think that's part of what's going on here with my cosmos. I have this large stand of them here, and I also have a really large stand of them here. That I can't even get to most of these flowers, so I will have to do a little bit of cutting on them once they start blooming really crazy to keep them a little bit shorter. But here's another really pretty flower that's easy to grow from seed and really loves the cool temperatures of spring and fall, and it's also an edible flower. This is nasturtium. So this is the tip-top Alaskan salmon nasturtium, and I purchased these on Baker Creek, and it also has variegated foliage. Now the foliage on nasturtiums is also really beautiful. They almost look like lily pads. So I really love nasturtium, and I think they're great. If you want to start some from seed, they're really easy. Just soak your seeds for a night. This is actually already starting to form a seed. This is what they look like. You would just let them dry out. You can collect them, and then you can collect your seeds to have some to start some more nasturtium next season. So that's really great. But yes, so in the middle of the summer, when your containers start looking tired, if you think to start some nasturtiums, they're great to tuck into your containers for fall blooms because they love cool temperatures. And my other cattle panel trellis that I have right here behind me, I am growing cucumbers as well as delicata squash, which is our favorite squash. It is delicious. And even George, who is not much of a veggie eater, loves the delicata squash. I just slice it up, I put some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and I roast it with some olive oil, and it is delicious. So we have quite a few growing here. There's 1, 2, 3, a fourth one there, maybe a fifth one. So they're doing really well. They're picking up now as we get later into the season. And cucumbers, this has been so productive. I've taken at least a dozen cucumbers off of this vine, and there is a few more on here that are getting ready to pick. Like I could pick this one, and these will be ready in a couple of days. So really great use for these cattle panel trellises. They're affordable and they're really functional and strong. And I've had these for several years now, probably 5 years or so. So they carried over from our last garden. And I have some more zinnias here on this side. I adore zinnias, and I think that I might almost love them more than dahlias for the simple fact that they are so easy. You just throw down some seeds every year and you get these beautiful blooms. Now here I have some varieties of the Queen Lime Red and the Queen Lime Blush, and you can see this one here is a Queen Lime Red. It has a little spider on it, and it is also so frilly with tons of petals. I really love these frilly fluffy ones more so than the single petaled ones that you see here. But this is always a treat when you find the fluffy bloom ones like this, because most of the time you're getting single ones with these varieties, but they're gorgeous. So the Queen Lime series and the Bennery's Giant, it's a toss-up which one I like more, but I think I'm leaning towards the Bennery for the sheer size of those blooms. But zinnias are a great annual. Zinnias, cosmos, sunflowers. If you're a beginner, super easy, and they will reward you with a ton of beautiful blooms. And we also added an arbor as part of our renovation to this garden space, and I really love it. I think it's adding a lot of character, kind of makes more of a grand entrance, and it's been really fun. Now for Mother's Day, my boys and my husband had gotten me this climbing black-eyed Susan vine. This is a Thunbergia, and it was a really pretty white bloom with a dark black center, which I thought would look really beautiful on this arbor, but it's been such a disappointment. It has not bloomed for me, hardly any. There's a couple of little blooms on top here, which I can't really see because they're up high, but here's one that I can show you. This is what it's supposed to look like. And I was hoping that this vine would be filled with these pretty little white blooms with the dark center, but that wasn't really the case. I was hopeful that it would have made it all the way over, and you can see that that hasn't happened either. So next year I'll try something different here, maybe a honeysuckle, or maybe I'll even just grow something different from seed to try out. Some purple hyacinth bean, or even some climbing morning glories or cup and saucer vine. We'll see. The options are endless, but I don't know if I want to put something permanent like honeysuckle yet, because I like the idea of trying different annual vines. And a couple more things that didn't kind of work out as I had hoped. One of them is scabiosa. So scabiosa I grew from seed, and you can see that it's done pretty badly. I don't know what the issue is, but it's starting to kind of go over on me now, and it wasn't very productive. I even put up these peony rings in hopes that it would support it. So not only was it kind of like messy because it just kind of fell all over the place, the blooms were kind of lackluster, and they're also not very sturdy. So I'm not really sure how people use these in cut flower arrangements. So that was something I was a little bummed about. And this celosia is one that I thought was going to be a bit larger, and it hasn't been that big, but the bloom is pretty interesting. This is one that on the seed packet kind of looked like a brain. It was from Baker Creek, and it was supposed to be a little bit cooler than what it looks like now. So that one I was a little bummed about. But in the evening, this garden also looks really pretty with the solar lights that I added. Because they are metal raised beds, Vigo actually makes an accessory, which are these lights that snap onto the side of the bed. They're magnetic, and they have a groove, so they fit perfectly into the ridges of this classic garden style bed that I have. And it just adds a really nice glow to light up this path. And the glow is very faint, so it just lights things up enough for you to be able to see where you're going, but not enough where it would disturb wildlife or insects in the garden in the evening. So it's really nice. And check out these marigolds. I just have to show you these because they're adorable. Now, they took a little bit of a break over the summer when it was really hot, but now they're starting to bud up and bloom again. And they are the strawberry blonde variety of marigold. They have really pretty shades of kind of orange, almost like a burnt orange, and a little bit of yellow, just really pretty. In fact, I think that I am going to transplant a couple of these to some planters that I have up on my patio that need a little something, because the begonias that I planted on them are kind of lackluster and not looking so great now as we head into the end of the summer. So yeah, thinking about transplanting those. But if you're thinking about a garden renovation project, I highly recommend these metal raised beds, because they not only look pretty, but they have been so productive for me this year, and I just really love the aesthetic of them. Now, we did set them up in April, and by the time I planted in them in May, I got a little bit of a late start to the season because there are so many tasks that we need to do in the garden in the spring. So I sort of wish that I had set them up in the fall so that I would have been ready to go in the spring. So if you are thinking about doing a project like this, the fall with the cooler temperatures will be ideal for setting up some new garden beds so that come spring, you are ready to go. And you might recall that a few months back, I had made a video about this bed here that we had put together from the leftover panels from our Vigo raised beds that we built inside the raised bed garden. Now, because the kits are modular, you will sometimes end up with extra panels depending on the configurations that you put together. And that was the case with us. And so I was able to get this 5x2 bed to put in this corner here that fit perfectly on this fence panel, and I packed it with some more annuals. Now, my friend Maria, who is a regular viewer of my channel. So Maria, thank you so much for these plants that you shared with me. They are looking beautiful. She shared with me these cosmos that I absolutely love and that I will be saving seeds from to grow next year. It has a really pretty golden color and they're gorgeous, always loaded with blooms and pollinators. She also shared with me some cleome that is now finished blooming, but it was a really beautiful pink. There's just a little bit left on the top, but it almost looks like a firecracker. Like, it's just really pretty. And I tucked in some other cosmos in the back here that you can see are all budded and getting ready to bloom. And some polar bear white zinnias that I had left. So I went ahead and put them in here too. And some of my shorter sunflowers that I started from seed, I put along the front. And they were looking gorgeous just a few days ago. They had lots of pretty blooms on them, but now they're starting to go over. But they were really, really pretty. You can see that the birds are already making use of them though, because they're starting to peck at the seeds here. So I will leave these on here for our bird friends. but they made a really pretty addition to the front of this bed. So this container that wasn't being used, we put together, and now it's making great use out here with some annuals. And this fall, I'm going to use this to plant my garlic. So here on the back of the fence, you can see I have lots of my dahlias growing, and they're looking gorgeous. So this is the Thomas Edison, which is so prolific.
Why are they all facing outward?
I think they're facing the sun, I think is what's happening. So we actually, George and I have been talking about how we're having a little bit of a sun issue in this area, which is part of the reason why I think my cosmos and my zinnias, they all kind of lean a little bit and they've taken a while to grow. So we might have a tree that is not looking so healthy that we might have to think about having that tree removed next spring. So we'll see how it goes. But all in all, they're doing fairly well. I have this one that I have to cut. This is the Lavender Perfection, and it is gorgeous. Now I have a terrible problem with earwigs, as you can see right there. And I do I have pellets of the Bonide bug and slug that's supposed to take care of earwigs that I put down on the soil, but as you can see, I still get some. So I think it helps a little, but it doesn't completely get rid of them. I have a real bad earwig problem. For the most part, they have looked pretty good, my blooms, so I can't say that it's affected them all that much. But check out this beauty. This is one of my favorites. It is called Alamode, and it is a pretty peach and kind of a creamy white with a hint of pink variety. Just really pretty. So these are really picking up now, and I should be able to make some pretty dahlia bouquets for quite some time heading into the fall, which is always really exciting. While I was in here, I decided that I would go ahead and try to transplant a couple of these marigolds so that I wouldn't forget. And we're supposed to get rain tomorrow, so I think it's a good time to attempt the transplant. So I'm going to grab this plant right here from this side, and then I'm going to also take one from the other side. So I'm just going to try to get some of the soil with it so I don't disturb the roots too much. And I'm just kind of slicing around it with my trowel, which this trowel has been my favorite this season because it's actually a dirt scoop or a soil scoop, and you see how deep it is, but it works great as a trowel too. All right, so there we go. Here's one. Just fix my soil. And I'm going to get another one from this side because I have two here. So I'm going to get this smaller one that is getting hidden by my parsley, and I'm going to move it.
Did you grow that from seed?
Yeah, I grew these from seed. The strawberry blonde. It's a really pretty one. Strawberry blonde, like my natural hair color. It's actually dark blonde, but here we go. All right, let's go ahead and move these. So right here in this tall planter on my patio, I had planted a tuberous begonia. And while it was beautiful earlier this season, it is now down to one stem. So not looking so hot. So I don't know that I'll grow it again. I think I've tried it once before, and tuberous begonias just don't do well for me for whatever reason. So we're gonna go ahead and attempt with this marigold transplant to get a little bit of fall color going in the front of this container. So I am going to go ahead and plant the larger one here. So let me make some space. Actually, I think I'm just gonna pull it out. I'm going to get a little bit of fresh soil. So let me go ahead and water this in, and then we'll do the other one. If you are going to transplant something, the evening when the sun has gone down is the perfect time to do that. And especially right before you're getting rain, which we're supposed to get rain tomorrow. So I'm hoping that that will really help this marigold kind of settle into this new spot. So I tucked the other strawberry blonde marigold right in the front here. I did leave the tuberous begonia in this planter because it was still doing a little bit better than the other one was. So we'll just let it hang out. But you can see that this licorice plant has really filled out and is looking gorgeous. So I would definitely grow this again. The diamond frost euphorbia is also looking really nice. And the cordyline in the center that I overwintered from last year is also doing great. So that was a good way to save a little bit on your annual containers because I was able to reuse this plant, at least for this season. And the coleus, or what George likes to call gremlin skin, for obvious reasons. He thinks that these leaves look like the skin from gremlins. So if you're an 80s or 90s kid, you might remember that reference here. But looking really good. So this container I'm really happy with. Even my Boston ferns are still looking really happy and putting out a ton of new growth at this point in the season. So there's one more thing that I want to do tonight, and that is fertilize my raised bed garden. So let's go down there and I'm going to show you this little gadget that I picked up that I think will make that job a lot easier. I wanted to show you one more thing that was a fail. This was the third thing I was thinking of and it wasn't coming to mind. My asters. They looked so beautiful earlier in the season, but now they're looking terrible. You can see that the blooms are so tiny and they just look sickly. I've actually cut on them in hopes that it would kind of rejuvenate the plant, but no such luck. But they were so pretty that I will try them again next season. So here's the fun little gadget that I picked up for myself recently on Amazon. It is a hose and sprayer. And the reason I grabbed this was because when I was doing my fertilizing on Fertilizer Friday, it was taking me way too long to fertilize because I was using a traditional watering can. And so I would have to fill up anywhere from 6 to 8 watering cans to do this whole area. And it was taking too long. So I decided to pick up one of these because I had seen people use these for like lawn treatments. There is another popular fertilizer that comes with a hose and sprayer like this. So I thought if I could find one of these containers, I didn't even know that they sold them, but it turns out that they do. I could attach it to my hose with my fertilizer in it and water my garden and fertilize it at the same time. So I thought this was genius. So I am going to go ahead and fill up about 4 ounces of fertilizer in this container. And I have set the dial here to go at a rate of 1 ounce of fertilizer per gallon of water. So as I'm spraying with the water that's coming from the hose, it's going to disperse it at 1 ounce of fertilizer per 1 gallon of water. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put in my Alaska Bloom fertilizer, which is what I like to use in here so that I can get lots of blooms on my zinnias, my cosmos, and my dahlias. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to use. I love the fish fertilizers. It's what I've been using for several years now. They work really well. I've been using this little kneeling bench as sort of a table in here. It's been working out well. So if I need it to kneel down, I have a kneeling pad. And if not, it serves as a little table. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my fertilizer. I did rinse this out, so I'm going to clean that out. And there is measurements on the side here. So I'm going to fill in to right around this like 8 ounce mark here. That's pretty good. It's more important that you're precise on the dial because that's how it's going to disperse your fertilizer. So how much you pour in here doesn't really matter, but you probably just want to have enough that you'll use at least this time and next time.
Just a holding tank.
Yeah, just a holding tank. All right, so once you have your fertilizer in there, all you have to do is just hit the trigger like you would a regular hose. Oh, the hose isn't on. Let me go turn on the hose. Several years ago, I planted some gladiola corms in this area here up along the fence, and I never bothered digging them up, even though they're not supposed to be hardy in my zone. And I thought that by putting them by the fence, they would have some stability and not need staking. Well, they don't bloom very well, but I never felt like digging up these leaves, so I just leave them. And every once in a while, I will find a really pretty bloom to surprise me. Here's a cute pink one. I think everything is looking really beautiful in here, and it's brought me a lot of joy this season. So if you are looking to add your own raised bed, Vigo beds to your garden, I always have an affiliate link in my description of my videos that you can use. And also I have discount codes or promo codes that they will provide me, and I will keep those updated periodically. So if you're interested, check that out. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.